Welcome to the latest edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, which is, by the way, a special edition because I'm usually coming at you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. But this edition is coming to you on a Thursday. Now, why would I do such a thing? Why would I feel the need to go beyond the 3 shows that I do for you in a week to adding a 4th show for you to hear? It's because of who my next guest is going to be. She is a lawyer. She's an entrepreneur. She's an author. She is also a television host. She has done phenomenal work throughout the years in the world of news, in the world of entertainment, even in the world of sports and pop culture. And she is somebody that is incredibly knowledgeable and fearless in the things that she articulates. Of course, because she is a lawyer by trade and by profession, she is more than qualified to talk about the circumstances surrounding the one and only P. Diddy at this particular moment in time. She's also qualified to talk about a bevy of other issues, particularly those going on with women in the world today. Dare I say black women in the world today and beyond. You don't know what she's going to say, and neither did I. But after listening to her, I decided to carve this out from a regular show and to make sure to isolate this as a special edition because she's pretty damn special and she knows it. And she's got a lot of things to say about the ladies. And she wants to hear about the fellas. So she came to moi. I don't know what she was thinking. But then again, some would say I may have met my match. Who knows? You'd have to watch the interview to find out. Her name is Eboni K. Williams. And this is a special edition of the Stephen A. Smith Show, right here over the digital airways of YouTube. Just for her. And you, of course. Back with Eboni and then some in a minute. Don't touch that dial. Let me take a second to make sure you all know, not only is Major League Baseball in full swing, but the NBA playoffs are just around the corner. So every home run, strikeout, or three-pointer is very, very important, okay? And I don't know about you, but I need to be in the middle of all that action. And how do I do that exactly? I use Prize Picks, of course. You see, Prize Picks is the largest fantasy sports platform with more than 3 million members, and it's not only super exciting, but incredibly easy to play. It takes only 60 seconds to make your picks, all right? So don't sweat it, all right? All you do is select 2 or more players from the sport you love, whether it's the NBA, the MLB, the NHL, or even boxing, and then choose more or less of their in-game stats. So if I know that Kyrie is dishing out 10 assists and Ohtani is hitting 2 homers, I need to pick that and play to be rolling in the money. So go to prizepicks.com and use promo code SAS for a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. That's right. Just go to prizepicks.com, type in my initials SAS for a first-time deposit match up to $100. That's code SAS when you go to prizepicks.com. Pick more, pick less. It's really, really that easy. All right? My next guest is an attorney, a former Real Housewife of New York, and the host of the podcast Holding Court with Eboni K. Williams on the iHeart Network, which, by the way, is fresh off an NAACP Image Award win. Let's get that out the way first, okay? The podcast features on news, or is featured on newsmaking cases and famous faces. Please welcome the lovely Eboni K. Williams. How you doing, girl? Long time no see.
Stephen A. Smith, it's been a minute. Congratulations, brother. You look amazing.
Thank you so much.
Yes,
I appreciate
yes.
it. So do you.
Thank
you. Let's get right into it because we got a lot of stuff to get into.
Yes,
we got a
we
lot
do.
of stuff, especially as it entails you directly and in a good way. But before we even get into that, I got to ask you right now.
Yeah.
You know about this case, and we've talked about this case against Sean P. Diddy Combs, obviously being accused of sexual assault, sexual trafficking, engaging in other criminal activity. You've seen all of this take place, all of this come in motion. What were your thoughts when you first heard about it?
Well, Stephen, I can't say I'm surprised. Unfortunately, we are still very much, as a society and as a culture, dealing with the continued reckoning, as it will, with Me Too. So we know no industry is untouched. And so there was just a matter of time before we saw more of it as it relates to hip hop. So the allegations are horrendous. We all kind of, I think, were rocked a bit in late November 2023 when we saw the original Cassie of it all, which really started what became a snowball of what we've seen thus far. There's at least 6 current litigation spaces in which he's named, and the most recent being where he's a named defendant, not accused of sex assault, but of aiding and abetting the sex assault of allegedly his son. We're talking about Christian Combs.
That's right.
Yeah, so it's sad, it's heavy. Of course, all allegations at this point, he's not been convicted of anything. In fact, he's not been criminally charged.
That's right.
Of anything.
And
I
what
think
do we
that's
make
important.
of that? What do we make about the fact that it's been going on for weeks now? We've seen Homeland Security raid his homes in both Miami and Los Angeles, but no arrest has taken place. Because of your legal mind, your legal expertise, what do you make about the fact that no charges have been leveled against him as of yet?
I don't make much of it, Stephen. The feds are fetting. That's what that tells me. The federal government is. We've been aware for weeks. I assure you, this has been going on for months in terms of the investigation. Months of collecting evidence, getting witnesses to collaborate particular stories and testimonies. What we're seeing now are kind of probably the final stages of what this investigation looks like. We know the recent. You're talking about the home, and I want to get back to the Homeland Security piece, not the FBI.
That's right.
All federal agencies, but they're a little different. I want to spend some time there in a second, put a pin in it. But the fact that they specifically, Stephen A., recently collected cell phones, other electronic devices, that's kind of the end of the road, as we say. Those are going to be the final pieces that they're looking to corroborate, probably some pre-existing testimonials for I would imagine a long list of potential witnesses.
Let's go there for a second. When we talk about Homeland Security, the difference between local PD, FBI, Homeland Security. What are we to make of the fact that Homeland Security is the one that raided these homes as opposed to the FBI or local police?
That part is fascinating to me. Now that's where I'm interested, really, really interested, because normally we would see sex trafficking, racketeering. It sounds a lot like recently what we saw with R. Kelly. It sounds like other things we've seen in the headlines. The fact that it's not the FBI and it's Homeland Security. Homeland Security, Stephen A., is a relatively new federal division. We just got it post 9/11. It is a direct result of 9/11. So it triggers certain things, right? It normally triggers terrorism, to be quite direct, issues around border control, border safety. So when you think of some of these civil litigations that name Puffy right now, some of them also include the illegal selling of arms, the illegal selling of drugs, in addition to the sex trafficking. So I don't want to put the cart before the horse. We don't want to do any too much speculation here, but there's something awry where they're thinking that there's something dealing with the border issue and potentially a foreign threat of some nature. It's got to be in the mix for them to go with Homeland Security.
And the one thing that comes to my mind is when we talk about sex trafficking, obviously, that's something that could be of an international variety, and obviously it entails crossing the borders, and that might be the justification
I think
as
you
to
might
why
be onto something.
Homeland Security got involved.
Yeah.
I'm looking at the case, his former girlfriend, Cassie Ventura. She brought against him. It was settled a day after it was filed. Is that what set all of this in motion, in your estimation?
It did. I can't help it. When you read it, I think of what my grandmother would have said: a day late and a dollar short.
One day.
Well, and let's kind of just name it, right? The one day says that obviously Mr. Combs and his legal team might have thought this was a bluff. And sometimes this happens when you're on the back end, meaning you're on the legal representation side of these types of lawsuits, Stephen A. Know that before somebody walks that lawsuit and gets it filed in the clerk of court, there have been numerous what we call pre-litigation conversations. Lawyers picking up the phone, calling your legal team. Well, do we have an opportunity to settle this? Well, I don't think so. Well, all of that led to no resolution, which is why the lawsuit was actually filed and then settled a day later. It tells me, Stephen A., that they likely thought that the lawsuit would never actually see the light of day, that there would be so much probably fear, anxiety, hesitation, that some of the, let's just say, horrendous and horribly egregious details that we all read in that very lengthy lawsuit from Cassie would never want to be exposed. The fact that there was a willingness to finally go there publicly prompted the very quick, 24 hours. I don't think I've ever seen something publicly so quick, the settlement there. And yes, to answer your question, it set everything in motion. It opened the door, as we say, to now what we're seeing as a litany of civil litigation attempts.
Another woman, Joey Dickerson Neal.
Yes.
She filed a lawsuit a day before the Adult Survivors Act expired.
Yes, she
First
did.
of all, explain the Adult Survivors Act, please, and its relevance.
I can. So I just recently stepped aside from my tenure. I served 6 years, Stephen A., on a board of directors for a wonderful organization called Safe Horizon. We are the largest victims advocacy group for services of victims of violent crime in the country. We specialize on New York. I named the organization because we were very vital in leading what became a legislative effort. So I want to be very clear. The Sexual Survivors Act is a law. It is specific to the state of New York, and it allows a look-back window of 1 year. It says that if you have been abused and you want to be able to prove that in a court of civil law, so none of this is criminal, this is civil. These are lawsuits, civil litigation remedies. You have 1 year to bring your claim. A claim that previously would have not been viable due to statutes of limitations. So you could have been alleging that you were assaulted or harmed 20, 30, 40 years ago.
Well,
literally.
Dickerson Neal claims that nearly 32 years ago, the incident with her and P. Diddy Combs took place.
Let's think about, Jean Carroll recently won her lawsuit against Trump. I think it's on appeal again now. That was, 40 years ago, something plus, all a result of this look-back window. So this young lady, Joy, was able to file 1 day before the expiration of that. And I think people thought there were going to be more. I'll tell you, in the legal community, Stephen A., we were expecting even more people to come forward right before that look-back window.
I got to ask this question.
Not you.
I'm sorry. I mean, I'm trying to figure out how. Listen. Let me be very, very clear.
Yeah.
Anybody guilty of any kind of crime, particularly violating a woman, violating another human being, to throw them under the jail. Please let me be very, very clear about that. I'm just trying to figure out how you could say 32 years ago or 40 years ago, this happened, and somehow, some way that can be quote unquote proven in a civil court of law that in Trump's case cost him supposedly over $454 million to be exact. Could obviously cost P. Diddy a boatload of money. How does that work in the eyes of those who don't understand that somehow, some way, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, 40 years ago, we give you this 1 year window for a look back, and something may have happened in 1988, we coming for you.
Listen, since you're being clear,
yes,
let me be clear.
Please.
Okay? Let me be very, very clear. Nobody's saying, Stephen A., that these civil claims 20, 30, 40 years after the fact are not going to have challenges. They're going to have severe challenges. Now, in the Trump claim, listen, 12 people in a box heard the testimony, saw the evidence, and decided they felt that there was liability there. Only those jurors, let's be clear, only those jurors can tell you exactly what they found believable. But as it relates to Mr. Combs, as well as, anybody else here, you've got in 20, 30 years, people get foggy memories. Sometimes people pass away. So your ability, to your point, to prove the viability of your claim becomes more and more difficult with each passing day. Okay, sometimes it's hard to get people to show up and remember things within the year. So the more you add to that, the longer the distance, the more difficult DNA is to gather. All those evidentiary pieces become challenged. However, here's one of the benefits to having a longer time to bring your claim. We have more technological advances. So this is why you have like a cold case file that all of a sudden something you just couldn't prove scientifically 10 years ago, 15 years ago, might be provable today. If there was indeed evidence collected at that time that we can prove the chain of custody was valid and everything, and now all of a sudden you've got an opportunity to prove something scientifically that was not available to you previously.
I'm looking at these cases against P. Diddy because I want to get on to you in a second, but I'm thinking about his son.
Oh, no, let's stay on Puff.
I'm going to get to you in a second, but his son, obviously, we already spoke about that. Usher and some of the things he alluded to seeing when he was a kid, being around P. Diddy. Obviously, Justin Bieber, you've heard his name brought up on many occasions, and being around P. Diddy. This guy, Lil Rod, who was a producer for Combs, he filed a suit against P. Diddy. All of these things going up against him. Have you seen anything? I mean, I'm thinking the days of Jeffrey Epstein. We know what happened with him. We know that R. Kelly's in jail for with a 30-year sentence at the very least. We see Harvey Weinstein. We know what happened with him. Is this legitimately along those lines in your estimation, or is it a bit embellished or exaggerated in any way?
Well, I can't speak to if it's embellished or exaggerated, Stephen A. I will say a lot of these facts are looking similar. There's patterns here. And I think when we zoom out, let's talk about it from a culture. I'm going to take the legal hat off for 1 second, put the cultural hat on.
Sure.
I think what we're seeing are case after case after case. And we're seeing it that it spans race. We're seeing black men and white men. We're seeing men in, we've certainly seen it in sports. We've seen it in entertainment. We've seen it in finance. So we're seeing across industries, across races. What do these men have in common? They're all extremely wealthy and they all hold a significant amount of power, right? And I think that there were things that were deemed acceptable, things that were commonplace. At a particular time and era that are simply no longer acceptable, Stephen A. Now, we could argue and litigate whether they should have ever been acceptable. Of course, we sitting here as good, reasonable folks would say that these things should have never taken place. But we know that they did. We know that there was a time in which we lived in a look the other way culture, in a boys will be boys culture, in a rich people will do what rich people can get away with culture. It seems to be clear, very, very, very clear, that that era is now bygone, and now that the chickens are coming home to roost. And I think when you look at public opinion, Stephen A., I think you've got two primary camps. You have people that say it is what it is, just because, it's kind of the yesterday's price ain't today's price. Yesterday's standard of appropriateness is not today's standard, and, off with their heads. And then you've got another camp that says, well, hey, wait a minute, these things are deplorable to us today. We've evolved as a society. There are things that you couldn't say 10 years ago, 15 years ago on air. You've been in the higher echelons of our business for a long time. There are things that you could have said 15, 20 years ago. Can't say it. Can't even think it today.
That's right.
Right? And people are saying that the retroactive punishment of things just because we've evolved is not fair. There's something unjust about that. So I find that piece of it interesting. How are we to determine what justice looks like in real time as it relates to things retroactively?
Okay, everybody, you know what time it is, right? It's time for Stephen A's Weekly Picks. I've teamed up with Prize Picks to bring you my favorite sports picks each and every single week. If you don't know by now, then listen up. Prize Picks is a skill-based, real-money daily fantasy sports game where you pick 2, 3, or even up to 6 players and select if they will have more or less than their predicted in-game stats. But the part that gets me super excited is that you can choose from any and all of the sports you love to watch. I'm serious, y'all. I'm serious. Now, there's basketball, baseball, soccer, MMA, golf, even darts. My Lord, the list is endless. And don't laugh at me over that, right? This is not me throwing out the first pitch. I'm talking about darts. Anyway, if you go to prizepicks.com right now and use promo code SAS, you'll receive a 100% deposit bonus up to $100. You heard me right now. Go to prizepicks.com, type in my initials SAS to get a first-time deposit match up to $100. Today, however, I will not be selecting a sport. I'll be choosing the time you should use when you take a shower. More or less than 9.5 minutes. Do you want to be clean? Do you want to make sure the funk isn't still on you? Do you want to make sure that when you walk by a significant other or somebody you'd like to be a significant other or somebody you might work with or whatever the case may be, the stench that you had from the day before is completely removed from you? Then you know what you need to do, right? You need to stay in that damn shower a hell of a lot more than 9.5 minutes. You go in the shower and you in there for less than 9.5 minutes. I'm not saying the funk can't be eradicated, but you shouldn't feel secure that it is. Soap can only do but so much. You can only hide but so much with cologne and deodorant. You got to scrub. You got to get it off you. You got to feel clean. That requires more than 9.5 minutes. Damn it, bathe. Even in a shower, act like you bathing. Scrubber-dub-dub. More than 9.5 minutes. You know I'm telling the truth, unless you're nasty. Holding Court right here with the host of Holding Court with the one and only Eboni K. Williams. By the way, season 3 of that show premieres April 17th. Make sure you don't miss it.
Thank you.
How would you, looking at today's society and all the things you just articulated, how do you feel about what's going on today compared to some of the things that you've had to deal with being in this business? Not just you don't just know the law, you're educated from a lawyer's perspective, but you've also hosted television shows. Hell, you hosted sports shows, for crying out loud. You hosted me when you were working on Fox News, and I came in as one of your first guests.
Yeah.
I mean, you know this business backwards and forwards. As you see things unfolding in today's society, and you alluded to the Me Too movement and how that plays such an integral role. How do you feel about the Me Too movement at this particular moment in time, and how do you feel about the things that you've seen transpiring in our society?
I think in general, Stephen A., when you've got more accountability than less, it's a good thing. I do think there's such a thing as a pendulum swinging in an overcorrection, particularly in our business. I'm talking about the journalism part. I'm talking about the broadcast part. I think that you want to make space for things that do not protect abusers and wrongdoers and criminals, downright, period. And also, I believe that when you overcorrect to a point of so much political correctness. So I'm not talking about the criminal part. I'm not talking about the violation part. I'm just talking mainly about the rhetoric part. I'm talking about the thing that says we can't even play in the nuance of things conversation-wise or thought exercise-wise. I think you do a disservice to the ability to have broader impact. But this is a very nuanced point I'm making, and I hope it's clear. This is not to protect or make excuses for vile, inappropriate, illegal behavior. But I do welcome enough freedom, just enough freedom, Stephen A., that says that we can sit here, particularly as men and women in conversation as professionals, and give each other enough grace and respect to engage in something that might push the envelope, especially with our two big mouths, and big thoughts and big personalities, and have enough trust in the powers that be, in ourselves as colleagues, to figure that out. I guess I'm speaking specifically. There was, I believe it was Vice President Mike Pence at the time said something about how he wasn't allowed or chose not to even enter rooms with women.
That's right.
You remember this?
Yeah, he said he chose. He wasn't that he was allowed. He chose. He made that decision.
Not allowed, I didn't mean the bosses. I meant his wife. But anyway, I stand corrected.
Every man I know has bosses. That's right. Well, go ahead.
He chose not to. And that's that man's prerogative. But I would hope to think that that's not the standard, that we don't get to a place where men and women can engage. We don't get to a place where black people and white people can engage, where Jews and Gentiles can engage.
But the ability to engage has been compromised severely when you consider the punishment for rhetoric that has infiltrated our society. And that's one of the reasons why you have tens of millions of people. That's an excuse that they're using right now to vote when they look at somebody like a Donald Trump, and they're saying it's a breath of fresh air because the extreme left and the woke culture has taken over our society, much to their chagrin, whereas you have some people on the left saying you really, really would complain about that and prefer the alternative, which is somebody in their estimation that doesn't really play by the rules and says what he wants to say and will insult whoever he wants to insult. What side do you fall on in that equation?
Well, I'm not a binary person in that way, right, Stephen A? Like that's what I'm rejecting. That's what I'm indicting. To your question, right? It's that type of, I think, excuse and overreaction that becomes the alternative. And I think it's a fool's errand to say that, well, they've made it so difficult for anybody to be authentic. The PC police are policing, and so we're going to go with somebody who's so outrageously outside of the norm, so outrageously, one could argue, criminally. Some of that remains to be seen, but some of the verdicts have come in, and that becomes the hero, right? This becomes the kind of anti-hero, if you will, but really becomes the hero to a culture that says, I just think we need to trust people more, right? There are some individuals that you give them an inch, they're going to take 15 miles. Yeah, I'm talking about power and wealth primarily, and they're going to use it to take advantage and abuse. And then there's also many, many, many of us, but I'm really talking about our industry right now too, Stephen A., where we have enough ability, enough moral compass, enough integrity. Let me speak on integrity, right? To say that we can have this back and forth. I do it all the time with a mutual friend of ours, Charlamagne the God on the Breakfast Club.
Absolutely.
You see it, people see it in real time.
No question.
All the time.
Yeah. That's right.
And we can disagree, and it can be vehement, and then we shake hands and we move on with respect and integrity. And I think more people need to be given the opportunity to do just that.
Disagreeing without being disagreeable, basically.
That's
I think
it.
former President Barack Obama said that best, even though some would argue that during that administration, that's not what we were seeing from both sides of the aisle. Nevertheless, we'll move on from there and say this. Nevertheless, we'll move on and say this. As I sit here listening to you, before you came in studio, I was discussing former President Donald Trump and staying with politics for a second here, because obviously he switched his position. Initially, that he was a supporter of the national ban to some degree on abortion, obviously since the overturning of Roe v. Wade. Now he's saying that, you know what, it's basically states' rights. And the belief is that the GOP was pressing him, because if you take that hard line in the sand, in the sand, and put and advocate for a national ban against abortion, you're not going to get a lot of females voting for you, and you could definitely jeopardize winning this election. He saw that forest from those trees, and he's shifted his position to some degree. What did you make of that?
It's politics, you know, and listen, I don't even say that with condemnation. I think we lions are lions, snakes are snakes, politicians are politicians, meaning that they're going to evaluate, exactly as you just said, Stephen A., what is favorable for the electorate at that time. Now, this is a candidate, the presumptive nominee for the Republican Party, that not 6 months ago was bragging very publicly, very brazenly about being the sole creditor for overturning Roe v. Wade.
That's right.
And listen, there is a part of that party's base that celebrates and applauds that, and that makes him more enduring to him, right? More endearing, rather. Then we got to look at these numbers. Some pollsters probably sat this man down and said, Mr. President,
you're winning in 6 of the 7 polls. Don't blow it.
Yeah, correct. And then you've got a Biden administration who's looking for a re-election, and everything is saying, in fact, one of the critiques is running on women's reproductive rights and Roe v. Wade being overturned enough, because that is the winning issue for the current president. Let's be very clear. Okay, every time a referendum on Roe v. Wade or women's right to access healthy, safe abortions is on the ballot, it is a winning issue for Democrats. Period. And so the GOP in Trump's camp is seeing that and saying we cannot allow for this president to potentially run right back into the White House on this single issue. So,
I'm of the mindset that, basically it's just an indication that women are going to decide this election. They talk about, he could increase the black vote in terms of the support that he receives from the black community by anywhere from 2 to 4%, and that could swing the pendulum. They talk about, the white individuals that was particularly white males who will support him. I think it's going to come down to the women because of the Roe v. Wade situation. I think that's why he switched this position. My attitude is this is going to determine potentially the election for him. Do you find that to be the case?
I think that's right. And I think if we want to, I'll name it more specifically, I think we're talking about white women.
Yes.
Because we're talking about black women who are going to support the Democratic nominee 98%, as we always have. And there's conversation around that. Right. Putting that on aside for a second, we're talking about white women. We're talking about the pink pussy hat women who, many of them were aghast in 2016 when Trump took office. And now they're being asked to reconcile, what are you going to do? Like this is the moment of action. We don't want the tears the day after. Right. Where are you going to stand and show up in this moment going into November and this election? And I'll finalize it with this, Stephen A. It's interesting because a lot of people in the Democratic side of things have condemned some white women for voting for Trump the first 2 times. And it's this notion of it's a betrayal of the interest of women. How could you vote against your interests? I would say fall back. I think you need to really look at and honestly examine what are the interests of certain white women in this nation when it comes to the electorate, because you've got a vast difference, Stephen A., of what we call the economically and socially elite white women, who many of whom feel that they're going to be all right. Their children, their progeny will be all right economically and otherwise, with or without a patriarchy because they're going to school, they're making money, they're bosses, they're winning. Then you've got another very significant number of white women that do not feel that way, that feel as if their best chance for survival for themselves, for their children to go to good schools, for themselves to live good lifestyles and safe neighborhoods is fundamentally dependent on white male patriarchy and male patriarchy in general surviving to live another day. And so when you condemn those women and say, shame on you for voting against your interests, you're missing it. You're missing it. These women are not voting against their interests. So it will be interesting to me. That's who I'm watching specifically. That's who the pendulum will swing on. If the vote is, if this election, Stephen A, comes down to a particular demographic, I'm looking at these or undereducated white women because they will tell the tale.
Transitioning to you directly, you're an author, a lawyer as far as I'm concerned, with your law degree and what I've seen you do on television and talking about the law and talking about various issues in the world of news, law, and beyond. What kind of voice do you want to have, particularly considering the climate that we're living in? You have a lot of people that might be entitled to and tempted to shy away. That's not my mentality. I don't suspect that is yours.
Well, clearly, sir. Yes. Anybody that's been watching for the past 25 years know that you've never been afraid to stand on the front line. Popularity be damned. And that's one of the things that I've always admired and respected and really looked up to you in the, absolutely, in the template that you have laid for those of us in the broadcast space, whether it be sports, whether it be politics, whether it be culture. It doesn't really matter the genre. It is the willingness to be, to stand alone. So that's my answer. I think that it's very important to me, Stephen A., to be a credible voice, a believable voice. So that's why I don't do a lot of speculation, whether it's legal analysis, political analysis. I don't have crystal balls. I don't pretend to. Okay, I don't look and fortune tell. I read the facts as I see them and know them, and I offer people an opportunity to come to their own conclusions.
Do you get attacked for not providing perspectives, though? Because a lot of times people will look at you, your intellect, your accomplishments, your platform, and they'll say, hey, we want more, because they do it to me. You know, could you give us more? I mean, damn, you're selling out. You're not
tell us what to think.
Tell us what to think. Or, by the way, co-sign what we think.
That part.
You know that's more so the
that's
situation.
More so the situation.
Do you find yourself being pressured more than ever before because of the platforms that you have? Not just with this, holding court, but the Griot as well. Let's not forget that.
Yeah,
your books as well.
Yeah.
And you know,
the Judge Show now.
Yeah, how about that?
That's more pressure, sure. But more pressure means more impact. So I am somebody, God, glory be to God, truly. I was just talking to my mother about this yesterday. Being liked is simply not a priority for me, Stephen A. Not that, I want to be hated or I want, the hateration or the comment section to be on blast, but I simply cannot afford my integrity and my why in terms of why I am in this business. I could be in a courtroom right now doing really important, great work still, as I have done earlier in my career. I chose to pivot to broadcast and media for a reason, to have broader, global, national impact.
So you love that better than a courtroom?
I do, because I don't have to chase people to pay my bills. That's a big thing. That people don't talk about that part, but I'm gonna talk about it. No, but I still get to indulge in the thing I love the most, which is the intellectual exercise of legal analysis, and then broadly marry that with the thing that is beloved to me, which is amplifying and elevating the positioning of Black culture in this country, and I make no bones about it. And I get a lot of pushback for that.
From who?
From non-Black people and sometimes from Black people, right? I saw it during my tenure on Housewives. Well, why has it got to always be a Black thing, Eboni? My goodness, you're really just kind of going overboard with this Black thing. Can't we? No, I don't believe so. I don't believe there's such a thing. I believe when you're talking about being of an identity, Stephen A., that since our arrival on these shores, 1619, 400 plus years ago, it can't be overstated that we are not second-class citizens. It cannot be overstated that we are not here to serve in servitude or be marginalized. So I'm going to do it every day, all day, in every platform that I occupy because it is in me. And I believe that's why I was born. I do. I believe that is my God-given purpose, is to model that for not just my people, but for the world.
Graduate of the University of North Carolina, correct?
Yeah. I think you know that because you got that Carolina blue on.
That's right. Something like that.
I am.
Tell them where you graduated from law school again?
Loyola University in New Orleans.
That's right. And so you look at those credentials and you being a lawyer, you being a pundit, you being a host, having these platforms available to you. You just brought up the plight of the black community since we came over to this country, okay, in 1619. I'm wondering, do you find yourself being attacked or addressed because people still in this day and age say, what do black folks have to complain about? This is not the 1600s, it's not the 1700s, it's not the 1800s, it's not that. And I'm like, we know, and still the complaints are valid. Do you find yourself having to take that position?
Less often than I used to. I think because we, as people in this space, have done a better job as storytellers of making the case, right? We made, some of us are lawyers, some of us are not lawyers, but we still make that case every day, right? And the reality is this: while we might not be in chattel slavery anymore, thank God, when you look at the metrics, see, I'm a data person. You're a data person. I know that. So when you look at black home ownership rates, when you look at black wealth accumulation rates, when you look at the construct of black family in today's society, when you look at black achievement of higher education, I don't like the gap that currently exists, Stephen A., between black women and black men in higher education. I don't like it. I don't like it at all.
Alarmingly higher for black women than black men in this day and age.
According to the Washington Post, most recent report, 7-1. 7 times as many black women are getting higher education than black men. I don't like it because it does something to the black family construction. Next time we'll talk about it. But anyway.
And we both feel that was intentional, but that's a subject for another day.
Another subject for another episode, another brilliant episode of the Stephen A. Smith Show. So those metrics make the case for us. So we don't have to sit around and feel like we are whining and complaining about a bygone problem, because the proof is in the pudding. If you can point to numbers that show that the black American experience, by and large, I'm not talking about exceptionals like LeBron James or Michael Jordan or Barack Obama. See, that has been the argument, right? Is look at these unicorn, and I mean that literally, because when a startup gets to 1 billion, now we're calling it unicorn. So look at these unicorn black exceptional individuals, and that will make the case for black progress. It does not. It does not. I want to look at the average, reasonable, everyday black American and show me that their life and lifestyle and lived experience, so now it's more than money, show me that they are as safe in their communities as our white counterparts. Show me that their daughters are as likely to not be sexually assaulted and abused as our white female counterparts. I'm talking about white female fragility now, right? All of those things, when you show me that is exactly on par with our white counterparts, and this is important, Stephen A., this is not wishing an ill experience on white Americans. This is wishing them the same relatively safe and protected experience that they get, because they deserve it. And you know who else does? We do too. Right. That's it.
And I'm wondering whether
that's all.
I'm wondering if that ever's going to happen. And then from a political perspective, before we move on from this subject, you'll sit here and you'll look at the right and you say there are things that they can do and some of the policies that they want to implement, that they want to legislate for on behalf of, doesn't necessarily work in favor of the black community. This is coming from the left. But then you look at the left and you have to say to yourself, excuse me, you had nothing to do with the state of affairs that exists within the black community in this day and age. I mean, it doesn't matter whether it's education reform, it's welfare reform, it's the list goes on and on and on. There's always something, but we still seem to be fighting over the same issues year after year after year. And you want to blame one side, and I think both sides are to blame.
Yeah, I think the indictment is swift and ready on both sides, which is why I think those of us who have really been in these trenches, Stephen A., for a very long period of time, myself included, listen, the politics exist and they're not going anywhere. The two parties of it all aren't going anywhere. Why? Because there's too much money to be made and has been made. So what we have to look at, to me, are what are the grassroots, what are the self-determination of it all. So when I look at some of my heroes, right? So this is Marcus Garvey. This is W.B. Du Bois. This is Malcolm X. Even to an extent, especially during his latter speeches, Dr. King. Yes. You are not hearing these great men, and Ida B. Wells and all, my female icons too, right? None of these people are talking about government solutions. They're not. No. None of them. Look it up. Don't take my word for it. They are talking about things that we can do as self-determined, innate people, and this is the Africa in us now coming out, right? that says that we can put ourselves and our progeny, our children, our legacies on track to have the things that we deserve. And so that's really where I spend a lot of my time.
You know, you brought up the black family. Before I let you get on out of here, you know, I made a suggestion that I thought would help the black family in the years.
I love this.
And it's not just the black family, it's families all over the place. We were talking about men and women, and somebody asked me a question, and I brought up a strong 7. And I said, if you're a man out there and you want to be happy, you want a strong 7. The 10, no, she's a 10, it's too much drama. Okay, the 9 thinks she's a 10. That's too much drama. The 8 already knows that she's probably a 9, so even though it's not as much drama, it's still going to cause you some issues. But the 7, the strong 7, knows that she's beautiful enough, she's smart enough, she brings enough to the table, but in the same breath, her ego is not out of control to the point where it will force your ego to infiltrate the proceedings and nothing gets accomplished. That was my argument for a strong 7. Eboni K. Williams, was I correct in my assessment?
I vehemently agree with the strong 7 argument. Now,
you vehemently what?
I vehemently agree.
Agree.
That the strong 7 is best positioned. I'll go further. She's best positioned, Stephen A., to partner with the I don't want to say average. People get mad when I say average or mediocre. You know, they get real mad.
Yeah, I got you.
She's best positioned to partner with the majority of available. How about that? The majority of available men. And it's for all the reasons you said. And I actually identified this in my early 20s, like coming out of law school. And I realized that some of the things that myself and my female counterparts were priding ourselves on, being really, really well educated, being very well accomplished, being pretty, but like pretty in a way that society deems is particularly valuable, because we know there's actual pretty and then there's kind of marketability, if you will, the kind of objective standard. And those things really just did not translate on the dating marketplace. And imagine how perplexed some of us were. But I said to my girlfriends long ago, I said, y'all, all of this 9s and 10s, we might be in that space, even 8s. It's not going to serve us the competitive advantage when it relates to our sisters, who I'm even going to say 6s and 7s. Why? Because you got to really look at what the market, and we're talking about, and this is through a hetero lens, of course, this is what men want. What do men really want, Stephen A.? I'm going to say some things, and I want you to confirm or deny.
Sure. I'll do that for you. I
really invite that.
I'm ready.
I think men want to be affirmed. I think men want energy that is agreeable. I think men want, generally speaking. Yes. This is all general.
Generally speaking,
I think men want women who are available. And what I mean by that is their schedules, their literal schedules. When I pull out my phone and you pull out yours, it's not 3 weeks.
Oh, we're not taking this ain't Boomerang with Eddie Murphy. You're not putting us on the waiting list and we wait. We don't need you. We don't need you. Oh, that ain't happening. That ain't happening. No, you're absolutely right.
So some of these are the things that men are most desirous of, and no, you can't be so unattractive that you get kicked out the bed, let's be clear. But as long as you said it, pretty enough, attractive enough, those other things are going to supersede in terms of what the man wants. Now I will say this as somebody, I'm just going to give myself 8 and above. I'm going to just do that.
You should. I'm going to just do that. I co-sign that.
Okay.
I co-sign that.
Okay. I believe that I'll speak for myself. I am acutely aware, Stephen A., of the adjustments that I would need to make in order to be more desirable on the dating market.
Well, may I ask what are those adjustments?
I'm
just asking. You brought it up.
I did.
You did say
it would be some of the things we mentioned, right? Like I would need to make more time. I can imagine what your schedule looks like.
Right.
Mine might not look. It doesn't look identical, but it's probably not far off at this point. I tape a show on the West Coast. Last time I saw you, where were we?
Yeah,
in the air.
Flying back from LA.
We were literally in the air. We were 30,000 feet in the air.
That's right.
So there's a bi-coastal lifestyle issue that I think would need some attention if I was to really get serious about trying to partner right now. There is an intensity that I'm a very serious-minded woman, right? I deal with serious issues on a daily basis.
A dingbat can't be with you. It ain't gonna work. He got to have some level of intellect. He don't have a chance.
And honestly, even if I wanted to give him a chance, which I have done historically, don't tell nobody, I really wouldn't be as attracted. There's something about the attraction. You know, if you, there's a primalness to, you know, especially when we talk about heterosexual men and women, there's a primalness to how we are attracted to one another. And in order for me, who still very much, despite my intensity and my intellect and all this, you know, kind of what we would consider masculine alpha shit. Right, excuse me, I don't know if I can cuss on here.
You can.
Okay.
Go ahead.
I'm still very, you've known me for a long time. You've known me almost 10 years, Stephen A. I am still very much very feminine, very soft in many ways, and I'm still like a Southern belle in a lot of capacities. I'm born and raised in North Carolina. Let's go. So those things still, that receptacle energy is still very real for me. So now I need a masculine energy that can just almost overperform.
And you know what it is too, if I may say this
Go
right.
ahead.
Women need to know this. Women need to know this. Okay.
So.
All right. First of all, you gotta allow a man to be a man. Here's what I mean by that.
Please.
You have a lot of women out there who don't want to be quote unquote objectified. You don't want a man looking at you and he desires what he sees. This is what they say, a lot of
That's
them.
what they say.
That's what they say. And I'm going like this. So you want him not to desire what he's looking at when he looks at you? What kind of sense does that make? And not only that, don't get me wrong, he don't need to be classless. He don't need to approach you and be too forward.
Let me just be clear, whoever's listening, that's not my issue.
Right.
You know this about
That's
me, I
right.
think.
Yes, I do.
I'm a pageant queen, for God's sakes.
Right.
I pride myself on one of the things, in fact, there are also men, since we're going to do this, that pretty stuff don't mean that much to them.
Right.
It just don't. It's like you say, pretty enough, that's fine. If you are a man that average to a slightly above average aesthetic works for you, I am not your woman.
Right.
I'm not. Because I am for a man who values probably 9 out of 10 times when we walk into the room, you've probably got the prettiest lady on your arm. Yeah. And that doesn't mean
But
something.
you can pull that off.
Right.
I can't hold most women accountable for that because most of them can't pull it off like that.
I understand. And those are but you asked me what adjustments would I make?
Right.
Those are some of the adjustments. I would consider men, because I know that's one of my, it's like cards. You know your strong suit.
Right.
That's one of my strong suits.
But where I was going was this. I wasn't just talking about, I didn't mean objectified in a literal sense. I'm talking about you being a guy.
Yeah.
You coveting what you see. You wanting to be turned on by your significant other. You wanting to feel as if you're married, but you want to feel like you felt when you were dating. You don't want to feel like monotony and mundaneness is kicked in, and you're just going through the regular rigmarole of life, and it's devoid of excitement, suspense, intrigue, or whatever word might be appropriate in that regard.
It better be you, because if it's not you,
it's going to be
somebody else. Yeah. So I think that is an issue on its own, and that's on an island. I think for more women like myself and how I'm describing these 8s and above, we got that part, most of us, in terms of we're going to make you, that attraction piece is something that we're going to put energy into because we know that's how we got you. Right? Okay? I think it's the intensity. I think it's the constant. Okay. One of the best things I think about me, Stephen A., as a friend, as a romantic partner, as a daughter, even to my mother. If you are interested in being the very best version of yourself, I'm a very good person to have in your life.
Yes. Because you'll push them.
I'm gonna push you.
You'll push them.
I'm gonna push you.
Right.
Everybody don't like to be pushed. And I don't think in the romantic context, I've learned in real time that it is super appreciated from your romantic partner.
But the other part to that is knowing when. Like, for example,
you're right. Okay.
You got to know, because as a man, what we value is when you know us and we don't have to tell you. You've been around us long enough. You figured us out. You didn't just spend moments enjoying us. You actually studied us, got to know us, have a mastering of us to some degree where we don't have to tell you. You know, you might, you know when we want to go out. You know when we're not interested in going out. You know when we want to get down. You know when we don't want to. You have an idea of who he is without him having to tell you, because it tells him you've paid attention to what works for him, which elevates his level of faith in you that you will ultimately figure things out and y'all will flow along more smoothly than not.
I love that. And I think that most women need to spend more time with that figuring out piece. And I would also declare, Brother Stephen A. Smith, that the chief complaint that I know I felt in my relationship, because this is the problem, I've never had a problem attracting men. I believe you believe that.
I believe that.
Okay.
I believe that.
What I find has happened historically is that men are very attracted, not just to the aesthetic, but also even to, we'll call it the resume, right? They like what it looks like, what it presents like. And then they actually get to know me. And they realize they actually are fans,
right.
if I can just be totally honest with you.
Okay.
They're fans. They respect it. They look up to it. Oftentimes it's something they find aspirational, but they don't really know how to engage in it on a daily basis.
But you know why that is, right?
Please tell me.
Because you're not a fool. Your level of intellect, your principled positions.
That's it right there.
The combination of the two things. There's certain things dudes just ain't getting away with. And if you run across a woman that it is clear as day, you got no shot at getting away with the nonsense, you're like, damn. Path of easiest resistance. More men than not all men, but more men than not,
I think that's
will
right.
take a path of easiest resistance.
And I don't fault them. That's why what you don't hear me doing is being on these YouTube streets and Instagram streets complaining about it. I recognize that because I choose that principal position, and this is the same ailment, if you will, Stephen A., that I suffer professionally.
Right.
You know, there's shows that I've been in the ring for.
That's
that
right.
some people in this room didn't know.
That's right.
I ain't gonna say nothing.
That's right. We ain't got to say anything, but we know it's true. Absolutely.
But because of that principle thing, my mom get mad about it. She's like, girl, you know how much money you leave on the table with them damn principles? But and she's not wrong.
She's not wrong.
And how many men might be on the table, so to speak. To your point, I believe you're 100% correct. But I just this is where my faith kicks in, just to kind of wrap it on up. This is where I believe what God has for me is for me, and it will never miss me. I truly believe that. Not a job, not a show, and not a divine life partner.
Right.
That man is out there. He will find me. I don't have to go looking for him, and he'll find me on God's time, not on my time.
How about that?
So we'll go with that.
It is always wonderful talking to you. You are welcome back anytime. There's a lot of ladies out there that's listening to what you're saying, that just listen to the conversation. I ain't running from none of these conversations. I was raised by 5 women.
You're running towards it.
I'm not running from any of these conversations. It's no problem at all. The wonderful, incomparable Eboni K. Williams, appreciate you so much. Thank you for being here.
Thank you, brother.
We'll talk soon. She surprised me. She surprised me. I mean, let me be very, very clear. I usually think I'm right. And I ain't scared, like most people are in today's society, to have verbal communications of disagreement with women. I'm not scared. Maybe it's because I got 15 nieces and nephews. Maybe it's because I got 4 older sisters. Maybe it's because I was raised by 5 women. Maybe it's because 90% of my relatives have been women. But I've just never been scared. Matter of fact, sometimes I look at The View on ABC and I say, as great as that show is and as much of a top-rated show as that show is, you know what they need? Me. Sitting right there with them ladies to have those debates. I ain't scared. I ain't scared. But then Eboni just came up here. And I have to admit, that girl, she can say a few things or two that gives you cause to pause and say, maybe, just maybe, I didn't know as much as I thought I did. Somehow, some way, I suspect this platform will offer a lot of those moments. I think there's a lot of times that women will come on this show and they'll challenge me and, my producers and my staff will pick me up after they drop me. They drop kick me or whatever. They gonna knock me down, I know. But I'm gonna get back up. I'm gonna get back up. Only to get knocked down again. It's what they do. Eboni was the first one. Who knows who's next? I mean, between her and Areva Martin the other day, Lord knows what I'm in for. Here's the sick part. I love it. Wouldn't change it for a bit. Thank you, Eboni K. Williams. Appreciate your brilliance on a multitude of topics, as always. Thank you so much for blessing the Stephen A. Smith Show with your presence. And ladies and gentlemen, that was her. Tomorrow, there's somebody else coming in the house, right here in studio, blessing us with his presence. It's the one and only Jadakiss himself. Hip-hop artist extraordinaire, and then some. You know he's into coffee. Did you know that? I'm not talking about like Sonny Corinthos and coffee like he a mobster in General Hospital. I'm talking about really a coffee shop. Did you know that? And juices, got a shop selling juices and stuff. Jadakiss doing his thing. We'll find out what he's doing, what he's about to do, and most importantly, what he's feeling about hip-hop, where it is, where it's going, compared to where it has been. P. Diddy, J. Cole, Drake, Kendrick Lamar, Future, 50, the list goes on and on. If there's a brother that got something to say, it's Jadakiss. And he's going to say it right here, sitting right next to me on the Stephen A. Smith Show over the digital airwaves of YouTube. Until tomorrow, ladies and gentlemen, I'll see you. All I'm going to tell you is brace yourself. We don't know what that brother bringing. We just know it's going to be real. I can't wait. I hope you can't either. See you tomorrow, right here. Same bad time, same bad channel, as they used to say. Stephen A. Smith Show, signing off. Until another 24 hours. Peace and love.